Hey Scott, I told Wes that there was no pressure, but if he didn't get back on, you were going to let me present. And he texted back and said to tell you he thinks you can handle it, but he's working on getting things back on.
Okay, we're out there live.
I told Wes that there was no pressure, but if he didn't get back on, you were going to let me present. He texted back and said to tell you he thinks you can handle it, but he's working on getting things back on.
Okay, we're out there live. Okay, it's 9:58. We're still waiting for Wes.
Hey, Tim or Justin, are the live stream questions enabled right now on the YouTube screen? Because I'm not seeing them right now.
Yep, it should be. Let's add one. See.
Yes, live chat is enabled.
I think it just has some lag on my computer. Thanks.
All right, good morning. It's 10 a.m. in Big Canoe. We're going to wait a few minutes here for Wes to join us from Gig City. All right, I see Wes. All right, here in non-Gig City, we're at 321 megabytes a second, pretty good. Welcome, Wes. It's about 10 o'clock in Big Canoe on a overcast day, and welcome to the Lake Pettit Dam Town Hall meeting.
Okay, thank you, Tim. Good morning, everyone, and thank you for joining the Lake Pettit Virtual Town Hall meeting today. Over the next hour or so, our General Manager, Geo Syntech, and our Finance Committee Chair will review this multi-step 5-year program for maintaining and repairing the dam and the multiple funding sources the POA has to meet the relevant state safety requirements. The board supports this geosyntax process that they've undertaken and the in-depth analysis our finance committee has established for evaluating the Lake Pettit project. And now I'll turn the introductions over to Scott Allen.
Thank you, Miss Candace. Good morning, all neighbors. You should have on your screen there a gorgeous picture of Lake Pettit Dam, which does not look that pretty this morning, but welcome to the Pacific Northwest, where we apparently all live for a little while. A couple of things about today. This is meant to be an update to the community. I see it as the first of many updates to the community. So don't look at this as the be all end all. We're going to have every possible answer and every possible permutation. This is the culmination of about 6 months of work to get to this meeting today. And we're going to share with you everything we know. And if we don't know, we're going to tell you that we don't know, but we'll tell you when we probably will know. So don't think that if we're that we're hiding something or there's a dire plot here. There isn't. We're just giving you an update on where we are. And to do that, we're going to have two illustrious speakers. One is Wes McDonald. He's our Geosyntech senior engineer. He's out of the Chattanooga office. And Wes will start the presentation, tell you a little bit about Geosyntech also, so you know who is working with us on this project. And then Bob White, who many of you know, a neighbor in Choctaw, he is our financial committee chair, and he'll talk through some of the funding options that we have for the work that Wes is going to lay out. Then we're going to do questions. So everybody just kind of hold their questions until the two speakers go through, and then we'll do all the Ask the POA questions. There were about 30 some that had come in as of about 9 o'clock last night. We looked for duplicates, got it down to about 20. Again, if you don't feel like your question got answered, just go ahead at the end. We'll have a live question time. Go ahead and re-ask it. Again, not a dire plot. We just tried to get the number of questions down to something a little bit manageable and get rid of anything that was duplicative. And also a bunch of questions came in this morning, which I think we've covered, but if we haven't, again, just raise your hands. Ask your question, raise your hands. Also keep in mind that, like I said, this is just the first of many. So if it doesn't quite get answered today, we'll get it next time. So with that being said, we'll start with Wes McDonald from Geosyntech. Wes.
Great, thank you, Scott. Just to confirm, you can hear me before I get going too far. All right, great. I saw some heads nodding. Well, thank you for that introduction. As Scott said, my name's Wes McDonald. I'm a senior engineer with Geosyntech. And I also like to introduce Jamie Dotson, my colleague. He's our office manager and also an engineer of record in the Georgia Safe Dams program. He's on as well. So we'll talk about that a little later. But thank you all for having us, and we look forward to walking you through this plan, give you a brief history on Geosyntech, just so you know who we are, and then go through the history of the dam. Some folks may know some things, but want to make sure everybody understands kind of where we are, how we got here, and then go through the plan that we've lined out, specifically the goals and how the intent of it. And overall, Justin, if you wouldn't mind, you can skip to the next slide. Overall, the goal of the plan is to provide a planning level guide for Lake Pettit Dam for the Big Canoe POA. And the intent is over the next several years. And we've estimated expenditures and that may be necessary. Some things may not in the end, and we'll get to those. But the idea is a plan that should people change, people come and go, they have something to keep this thing moving and it's not forgotten over time. And then also we provided a rough order of magnitude. You'll see ROM throughout the presentation of the schedule and cost, because as we uncover and find out things may change. So real quick on Geosyntech, who are we? We're a 1,400 person consulting firm and focused on civil and environmental engineering, and we have engineers and scientists and support staff all over the country, but our main focus is bringing value to our clients and what they need and getting what they need and bringing value to that. We work with private and public sector clients, and address new ventures and complex problems involving the environment, natural resources, and civil infrastructure. Our clients are energy producers, and I'm focusing our clients here on dam related things, just so you understand. The energy producers, government entities, mining, contractors that perform dam work. That's a lot of who we work for, and I can't give you some of the energy producer names, but it's utilities in the Southeast, in Tennessee and Georgia and North Carolina, Alabama. So work with quite a few different clients that produce electricity and have dams. And just to draw that line there, that those kind of regulations are slightly different than what Lake Pettit is. You're obviously not producing electricity. You obviously don't have a revenue stream from that, which would be nice, but it also brings a lot of regulations too. So the Lake Pettit Dam is regulated by the state of Georgia, and we'll get to that later. And so in our dam service areas, just a few here, but we have many more. We do inspections, risk assessment, EAP, which is emergency action plans, and we'll talk about that later, and also design permitting for dam construction. So that's brief about Geosyntec, and now I'll go in. I want to present a plan view of the dam. I imagine everybody's driven over there probably multiple times a day, and you probably never realize what it all is. So this figure shows essentially the earthen embankment that is the main part of the dam, and on that earthen embankment are how many are there? 27 piezometers, excuse me. And those are those green dots that you see. There's 8 locations of them, but some of those locations have multiple piezometers. The piezometers out there are measuring pressures, which the pressures related to fluid, and in this case, water, that represent that we can turn into the elevation of the groundwater in the dam. And so those are instruments that have been monitored and will continue to be monitored. There's 13 interceptor drains out there. Those are the blue dots. Thanks. And those were installed a while ago. We believe it was around 1976 to help the water that's in the dam come out. And then you see there's benches. There's 5 benches there. The lower bench, bench 1, is where those drains outlet, and they flow to the left or the right abutment. And what that's doing is going into weirs where we can qualitatively assess the amount of flow that's coming out of those, and that's just something that we're checking when we're out there. The other thing to point out that probably people are familiar with is the spillway, which is on the right side of this image, but I guess a quick dam terminology. The left abutment and right abutment appear backwards than what you're oriented on this picture. However, it's typical to call the left side, the left abutment, your left side as you're facing downstream, facing the direction of the water flow. So if you stand where the creek is and look downstream, that's why that's the left abutment, and the right abutment is over there. So we'll talk about those as well. But the spillway is off to the side of the left abutment, and just wanted to point that out. It's a stepped chute shotcreted spillway that's been in place since the original construction. And that outlets to a creek that's down at the toe. And also the other features that outlet to the creek is the low level outlet, which is a pipe structure with a sluice gate. And the sluice gate is at the bottom of the reservoir. And you can't see it, but it's up there. So there's a light blue line. Hopefully people can see where we're tracing here. And it daylights, the pipe comes out down there at the creek. And those are important features in terms of how the water's handled at the dam. So the brief history of the dam, in 1972 is when it was constructed. There is not a lot of what we would like to see quality control or construction completion reporting that would be recording exactly how it was done. We don't have a lot of records on that. In fact, most of what we have are the original design drawings. However, as we go through this, you'll see we're collecting data about that ever since then. So in 1974 is the first observation of the dam of some seepage at the downstream face. And the downstream would be where those benches are, specifically around bench 1 and 2. So you may have heard some things like there's some now. It's been observed for a while. And as I said, these drains were put in 1976, as far as we can tell, these interceptor drains to help mitigate that seepage. We didn't have a ton of records between then and 1997. In 1997, however, Georgia Safe Dams program, so you'll see the Georgia SDP, the Safe Dams program is essentially who's in charge of regulating and inspecting the dams in the state that aren't otherwise regulated by an entity like FERC, the Energy Regulation Commission. So the dams like Lake Pettit are regulated by the Georgia Safe Dam program, and also a set of rules and regulations that's in the Georgia Code. And they generally, the Safe Dam programs have recommendations that mirror those rules and regulations. They have a little more, but it's to help the dam owners understand and maintain and operate their dams safely. However, in 1997, the Safe Dam program notified Big Canoe POA of issues and concerns from an inspection. And what that led to was a stability analysis to prove the dam was stable under steady state seepage and seismic conditions. So the initial consultant that performed that work did a stability analysis that was based on rough, not guesses, educated guesses, informed, soil properties and things, but they didn't have site-specific data at that time. So they ran an analysis and said, "Oh, this doesn't look safe." And there was probably some of the folks on the call who were around at the time may have remembered there might have been some talk about modification to the dam. However, they were saying at the time that it didn't meet the rules and regulations, and they proposed to construct a downstream buttress. Geosyntec was brought in 1998, and what we did is we came in and drilled holes, borings in the dam to get site-specific data that gave us information about the strengths and the materials, that information that was otherwise missing from the construction documentation. And from that, we were able to create an enhanced model that better represented the site. And we were able to overall, with lab testing and field testing, show that the dam met the steady state seepage stability as well as the seismic requirements from Georgia Safe Dams. There was a lot of back and forth on that. I think some of the analysis done was not familiar to Georgia Safe Dams at the time. However, it is kind of standard practice these days. So as a result, there were a lot of comments. In 1999, Geosyntec made a white paper that kind of explained, here's why we did this, and this is why you analyze it this way, both for the steady state and the seismic items. And then in 2002, it was somewhere between 99 and 2002, some comments came back from Georgia Safe Dams, and we prepared a response to those comments. My understanding is Georgia Safe Dams at the time brought in a third-party reviewer, which is standard, especially if they're not comfortable with things like the methodology and the calculations. And they brought one of our contemporary companies. I believe that it was Schnabel, and they work in the dam arena as well. And so they did a peer review and generally agreed with everything. And there was just kind of at the end of all that, it kind of just went away. And it showed it was stable, and we didn't really hear anything back from Safe Dam program. However, later on in 2005, the low-level outlet, like I mentioned, is a pipe running through the base of the dam that has the ability to pass the flow from the reservoir to the creek, and it's about a 3-foot diameter pipe. However, at that point in time, there was no record of it ever being activated, and there is a regulation to open that and test it. However, the Georgia Safe Dams program sent a letter agreeing that due to the fact that it could have had some material on it, and just the concerns about never having opened it for possibly a very long time, that they agreed and that it didn't need to be opened annually as required. So there's a letter documenting that. and so it still to this date has not been open that we're aware of. And then in 2008, we performed a camera inspection of the pipe, just routine, just to see, make sure everything's looking good. And even if you're not utilizing it, you still want to make sure it looks good. So, and just in case you ever have to use it. And the concern being that if you open it, the sluice gate, you may not be able to close it back and control your flow. So that camera inspection was in 2008. In 2009, the spillway had some maintenance repairs done during a period of low reservoir elevation and possibly some pumping at the same time to control the reservoir. Because generally that spillway acts as a weir, and the reservoir elevation goes right over the top and into the spillway. So if the reservoir is always at a certain elevation, the spillway is going to be flowing. So that was a good point in time to get in there and do some repairs with shotcrete and grouting. And so that was about 12 years ago. And then just this past winter, December timeframe, we completed a diving inspection of the sluice gate, which is part of the low level outlet, and also camera work of the pipe itself for the low level outlet. And again, just to kind of check things, make sure everything's still there just in case it's ever needed. So that kind of brings us to where we are now. And if you can go to the next slide, in general, the findings of the previous stability evaluation that I mentioned are still applicable. The regulations of the state have not changed, and it still meets the current state rules and regulations for the scenarios. In fact, the earthquake loading for this geographic location has gone down since then, probably because of some advanced modeling and understanding of the seismic conditions, and not just at this location, but in the industry across the country from the USGS. So really what that amounts to is there's the design requires less seismic acceleration. And so if it's less, then it's still stable under the analyses and the requirements done here. So, right now, you know, Big Canoe POA is being very proactive. They brought us in to kind of help them come up with a plan and be the dam safety group, to kind of advise on what needs to be done, just proactive things to continue this operation and maintenance of the dam. And so as a result, we've created a long-term plan that we'll go over here, the specific items in general. And again, it's subject to change just based on some of the findings that we're doing. But it includes the schedules and costs. And we also kind of generally gave some categories relative ratings, like what's more important. So with that, we can jump right in. This is the schedule. I'm going to go year by year in terms of what we're trying to get done. There are many things in 2021, and so I'll try to hit them all at a high level. The first one being H&H, hydrologic and hydraulic evaluation and reservoir rating curve. The dam was designed by an engineering consultant. However, the records of what it was designed to and everything like that have not been found. So we are going to make sure that the current regulations from the Safe Dam program apply. And then from this H&H, what we're going to do is run a very large precipitation event over this area, model it as the watershed flows into the reservoir, look at the ways the dam passes the water, whether it be through the spillway, the low level outlet, or by some other means, and judge how the reservoir elevation builds up on the face of the dam. So we want to understand where that is. And right now, we're actively working on that. So that is the key that kind of will build into everything else later on in terms of possible design items and understanding how to manage the reservoir. The inundation mapping is another item that's currently being processed. The last inundation map was from the modeling, excuse me, was done in the early 2000s. And that inundation map feeds the emergency action plan. And it essentially models a breach of the dam. So should all of a sudden the dam disappear, you know, the water would be released, and it identifies the downstream properties inundated by the flow. Our current analysis is using the requirements. So the requirements of the state have changed in terms of what model needs to be done. And so that's what we're doing. We're just updating that, and we will update it with updated property maps as well to look at those parcels that are inundated by the model. But the first step is doing this model. And the H&H and the inundation may sound somewhat similar, but they're not. They're totally different. One is for like a precipitation event and just seeing how far the reservoir ups. The other models, just if one day something happens unexpectedly, not related to the rainfall. So another item that we identified is the O&M plan, and that will identify operational items, inspection frequencies, maintenance. We know the inspection frequencies, but it's more to get an owner's manual for a car, so you know how often you need to change your oil, right? And that would be an inspection, right? So whoever may come and go, they have this on the shelf and can say, well, we need to do this, this, and this. And we see it as a very valuable tool. It's something that will be living, where we keep the inspection records, where if things change, if we need to inspect things more frequently, you can update it. But there'll be some updates to that later as conditions or possible setup at the dam changes. The potential failure mode analysis task is a PFMA is a tool that dam owners usually use to identify possible risks. So I talked about the Georgia rules and regulations requiring stability analyses, but this workshop would identify other things as well that may be something that's worth looking into, further analysis or further repairs, or maybe how you operate your dam. And essentially we would gather a group of industry experts focused in civil, geotechnical, hydraulic engineering that have been around for a while, and they would be at, look at what data currently is available, look at what, geology, regional setting, things like that could possibly cause other things, and be able to identify additional areas that either inspection could focus on, maintenance, or even in further data gathering and analysis. The feasibility study. So I mentioned the low-level outlet hasn't been operated to use. So we're recommending we get something to replace that, so that you can pull that, a long-term replacement that can lower the reservoir lower than where the spillway elevation is. And this feasibility analysis will look at several different alternatives and kind of do real rough design on it to come up with costs and schedules. And then from those alternatives, we'll work with Big Canoe POA and select one that makes the most sense. And that will be carried forward to the detailed design, which is the last item on this sheet. And that will be a design, and we'll coordinate with Georgia Safe Dam Program. And as I mentioned, Jamie is an EOR. I forgot to mention, Geosyntec has 4 engineer records on our staff. And that's important because the Georgia Safe Dam Program, whenever you do a modification to your dam, you have to have an engineer of record. And so that's a public list that's online that lists those people that have achieved those that approval from the Georgia Safe Dam Program. So it's a lot of records you have to sit in and justify your experience specifically in the dam arena. So from that, while that design is going on, the design and permitting is expected to take a while, just because we know Georgia Safe Dams is backed up in terms of backlog. It's an unknown in terms of how long, once we get that done, they will get things through. So I think we've assumed about 1.5 years for those types of activities, getting the permitting done. So while that's going on, we want to have something in the meantime to be able to lower the reservoir just in case it's needed. And so we'll create a plan for that based on some temporary things. Maybe it's some piping or siphons, something quick. It might be bringing in some pumps, but that will be directly corresponding to the H&H to understand how these rain events will come in. And also it gives us an understanding of the storage in the reservoir, how much water's there, and we can figure out how long it takes to lower it from that. So those two will go kind of in series. The next item is a threshold calculation package for the downstream piezometers. I talked about the piezometers out there, and we are taking readings on those. Now we're doing it quarterly and checking those levels. What hasn't been done in the past is a typical procedure is to calculate a value for those piezometers that represent a certain factor of safety. And I've mentioned that a couple times, but a factor of safety is generally a ratio of your things that want you to fail versus the things that want you to restore. And when it's at 1, everything's balanced and it's on the verge of failure. And you always want your factor of safety to be above 1. And so these thresholds would correspond to maybe a factor of safety. We haven't decided yet. We'll discuss that with Big Canoe, but between 1 and 1.5 or 1.1 and 1.5, and that will represent different levels. And so that, if you get a certain reading, whether it's below this level of concern or not. And so in general, we've been monitoring those piezometers for changes and actually comparing those to the levels that were put into the model in 1998. Because they used elevated levels of piezometers for that calculation. That's standard practice. So we're monitoring them presently. We're not flying blind, but this is an additional tool to make everybody feel good with the results of those instruments. The visual inspection of the dewatered spillway will tie into that plan for reservoir lowering. Once we can get that reservoir low, we can get that water out of the spillway and get in there and look at it. There's going to be some operational maintenance of that needs to be done this year as well. And similar to those repairs that I talked about in 2009. The feasibility study for replacing and repairing the spillway, excuse me. So what we'll do there is very similar to the feasibility of the low-level outlet design, come up with some multiple ways to do this and look at cost, choose as a group the best path forward, and either replace, repair, we don't know yet, that existing spillway so that it'll be operable for many years to come. And then that will turn into detailed design late in this year. And again, coordinating that. The key here is we want to get with Georgia Safe Dams and talk to them about that, so they're aware of what's coming, so we can do things quicker if needed, and also get their buy-in in terms of review. Another item here, this design and permitting of the upstream riprap protection. There's if anybody's been out there, there's the reservoir right along the face of the dam. We're just recommending that gets replaced. And that's a good opportunity to start our conversation with the Georgia Safe Dam program. So we'll be getting with them and talking through this in terms of how they see it. And so there may be some little work going on down there after that design and permitting is done, depending on the duration of that permit. I mentioned the interceptor drains as well on the downstream face. We get in there and replace if there's any that need replacing, so that drainage is maintained into those concrete ditches. And sort of all these three here, the non-functioning interceptor drains, the concrete weirs, and the concrete channels are all kind of tied together. It's all that same area on bench 1. The idea being to kind of replace those all as one, and then when replacing the channels is important, just because it's kind of been cracked up over time and spalling, just to make sure the water is getting off the dam and not going back into it. The weirs are important, as I said, to kind of qualitatively measure the amount of flow, make sure it's not changing drastically. And right now, the ones that are out there are a little hard to use and take some maintenance when we come out to clean them and things like that. So all those things I think we'll be able to do probably after the summer period. And then the last 2 items here are kind of ones that will hit every year, but I'll talk through them here in detail, and we probably won't highlight them as much in the subsequent years. But the EAP exercise, the emergency action plan, is the inundation mapping feeds that. So there's a flow chart of who to notify, and once Big Canoe notifies, they pass it to the county EMA, and that would activate if there's any oh, I lost the word, emergency evacuations needed. So the idea here is perform an exercise, and it can be tabletop just with those people involved. So if this ever were to happen, you know what to do. And it's just a good practice. And so we'll update that as well this year based on the inundation mapping. The EAP will be revised to include the new parcels, whatever development it overlays with the inundation zone. And then we'll double check contact numbers and things like that that are important as people come and go. So, and the last item is perform visual inspections. So the Georgia Safe Dam program requires owners to inspect their dam quarterly, and every 2 years an engineer-led inspection. And in 2020, Big Canoe asked us, Geosyn to perform the quarterly inspection. So we've done that for the 4 quarters preceding, and we'll be doing that for 2021 as well. I performed the engineer-led inspection in March of 2020. So we'll do another one in 2022. Those are fairly new requirements. The engineer, well, we've been doing engineer-led inspections for Big Canoe. I started working out there in 2013. I think we've done them since maybe early 2000s, mid 2000s. And the owner's inspections are somewhat new requirements from the Georgia Safe Dam programs starting in late 2017. So stepping into 2022, several things from 2021 are going to be ongoing. The excuse me, I guess I'll hit those later, but we'll start that with there are 2 conditions from the Georgia rules and regulations that are atypical conditions, not normal conditions out there. And one has to do with lowering the reservoir at a fast rate. You can get some instability there. And then also if the downstream face of the dam was ever to be inundated by a flood, that is the toe essentially covers the ball field down there, that can affect the stability as well. So we'll be performing those stability calculations in 2022. Again, those are tied to things like the H&H calculations. We've created a history document that kind of summarizes, that has the actual hard copies of those records I just talked through in the history section of this presentation. We'll be updating that, and so new things like the H&H analyses, any kind of calculations or O&M things or instruments will be going in there. So we have one spot for anybody that's coming out. The intent of that is just to kind of, if somebody needs to come in and learn something real quick about it, there's a volume, and that's for like experts responding to things or emergency situations. The detailed design permitting for both the low level outlet and the spillway will continue in 2022. And hopefully the depending on the permitting time with the Safe Dam program, complete that initial design and permitting of the upstream riprap and roll into construction in 2022. Again, with that construction, there may need to be the reservoir lowered a little. So hopefully by that time we'll have a temporary means to do that if it's necessary at all. And then, as I mentioned, the EAP items and the visual inspections are recurring items that, revise those EAPs or just perform a check, which I believe Big Canoe will be performing that for the contact information of those involved. All right. 2023 gets a little busier. It's when we start some of the construction of the low-level outlet and the spillway. But another item that we threw in here, just in case it's needed for design, is we may need to get out and do some field investigation, some drilling to get some extra data for the design components. So that would be geotechnical borings and lab testing for soils out there. And as I mentioned, ideally we'll be completing the design for the low-level outlet in this spillway and rolling into construction. Or excuse me, not completing the design, completing the permitting and then rolling into construction. So the costs right now for those are high-level approximations. And as I said, during as feasibility and going into detailed design, we'll be able to refine those costs a lot more. For both of these options, it'll likely require the reservoir to be lowered. And we don't know the depth at this point because we don't know the technology or the methodology that will be installed to replace the low level outlet and the spillway. Also in 2023, there's some items in here that we have identified as possibly being needed. They're not presently needed, but should conditions change from inspections and things like that, we would want to get out and get some additional data in certain areas to look at some of these things that aren't necessarily explicit in the Georgia rules and regulations, that are just good dam owner practices to look at these other ways you can have issues with your dam. So one's related to the seepage susceptibility, and again around the left abutment, and looking at material properties over there so that any subsequent design will be informed and ready to go. And that would be rolling into the feasibility study for left abutment seepage, and then detailed design for that. So very similar to the other feasibility and detailed designs permitting, these would be major changes that we need to go through safe dams, and we would get the engineer records involved. But like I said, these left abutment things are not presently needed. It's just items that we wanted to include on the schedule. They may be moved up, they may be moved back, just in case for budgeting purposes and understanding of long-term possibilities. Also, the EAP review, revision, and exercise. This one has a little more. Like I said, you want to review it every year for contact numbers, but whenever you complete any kind of major change, like with the flows, whether it be the spillway or even your temporary operating, you'd want to revise that, and we can help with that and conduct an exercise, just usually tabletop kind of thing. The inspections will continue. And then we roll into 2024, where I mentioned the operations and O&M plan earlier. So lots of things will be changing. We'll want to get those brought into the O&M plan so people know how it works. And the owner or the operator will be able to check his list every year and make sure everything's working properly. We would complete the detailed permitting for the left abutment seepage repairs and possibly start the construction of that in 2024 should it be needed. Again, these are out there. We don't have detailed information. We don't have detailed analyses. The schedule wise and cost of that are very approximate right now. EAP exercises and visual inspections will continue. And so 2025 and 2026, the current items we have are ramping down. The construction on the left abutment area will hopefully be completed, and exercises of the EAP and the inspections continue. 2026, there's one more thing we've added in here besides the exercise and inspections, but that was to revisit that original PFMA of potential failure modes, and revisit that with all the new information that will be gained over the previous 5 years, where there'll be a lot of calculations done, probably new ways to operate things, and probably some new insight that can be updated to use as a risk screening tool, and also to identify maybe the best ways to invest the in from then on, in terms of maintenance and operation of the dam. So all that I just went through rolls into this big schedule we've put together, and we've linked them with predecessors and successors. And this needs to be done first based on our suggestions. And we've provided this, what you see here. I won't go into detail on it, but this is what we've provided to the Big Canoe POA as kind of a playbook for the next several years. And I hope that answers, most people's questions. I know we'll take some questions at the end, but I appreciate your attention and everybody being on, and I'll pass it on now to Mr. White to talk about costs.
Thanks, Wes. I appreciate that. That's a wonderful analysis you gave us I'm not sure I totally understood all of it, but then again, I don't think anybody that watched this understood all of it. But I'm glad that we've got you as a partner because you apparently do understand it. I think the first comment I'd like to make is after 50 years, it's probably time to readdress what it is we're doing. This Lake Pettit was created as a central part of Big Canoe 50 years ago. And like about anything else you build, whether it's a building or a lake or a dam, it's time to address the redo of this dam. And I applaud the board and management for bringing this to our attention and saying that we're not going to kick the can down the road any further. We're going to address this now and take, quote unquote, the bull by the horns. So having said that, the $64 question is, what's it cost? Well, what you have on the screen in front of you right now is what it costs. We're going to spend over the next 5 years $4,125,000. Wes has already said, well, it could be more, it could be less. The answer to both those questions is yes. But we believe, based on what Wes has told us, and he's our expert, so these numbers are coming from him. They're not coming from us. We didn't make these up. These are educated guesses from the engineers on what it takes to fix the dam for the long term. And when I say long term, I'm saying, you know, if you've done it for 50 years, now you're going to fix it for the next 50 years. Does that mean you do nothing for 50 years? No, it doesn't mean that. But if you do it properly now, then you're going to have minimal issues, financial problems down the road. You can see that the big year, which he was addressing earlier, is in 2023. We're going to spend about $638,000 this year, close to $1 million next year, and then the big year will be in 2023, and then some smaller amounts in the 2 years after that. But over the next couple of years, as you can see, we're going to spend several $1 million. And that's the bad news, I'm sorry to say, but we do have some good news as well. And the good news is that we have the money. We can afford to do this. And if you'll put the next slide up, you'll see that we can afford to do this. This is our annual capital expenditure forecast. The 2021, of course, is the budget. That's currently approved budget. And you can see all of the master plan items that are on there, which includes the $638,000 for the dam. The $3,000,004 is our approved budget, and that covers all of the maintenance and routine stuff that we're doing around here. And the reason it's a little high is, of course, as many of you know, we pushed off a lot of stuff in 2020 because of the pandemic. Back in the spring, we weren't sure what was going to happen, and so a lot of things got delayed. Some of which got reinstituted and done in the fourth quarter, but some of it leaked over into 21. But you can see the other facilities that are the primary things in the master plan that need to be done. So this year really is our big year, candidly. When you get into the out years, you can see the capital expenditures of $3.5 million in 22. That does include a couple of items that we think we're going to need to be doing at that point. We've got bridges up in that run over the Cherokee Golf Course, and those bridges are between 4. Let me, if I get it right, 4 and 5 and 6 and 7. They're going to need to be repaired, fixed, if not possibly replaced. But the estimates for that are in there. The only thing on the master plan for 22 right now by the board is the parking lot, fixing the parking lot at the marina, and of course the chimneys renovation. And then you see Pettit, all the Pettit numbers you just saw a second ago. 2023, we're back to our what I call our normal capital replacement expenditures. We budget each year and have for a number of years now, it takes right around 2.9 million a year. The cash flows allow about 3 million a year. We usually wind up at about 2.9. There's a few dollars left over, and whatever left over, the Finance Committee has recommended to the board each year overages to be transferred into the capital budget. Anyway, that's where that is. I think if you look at the projects not yet identified, that's because it's in the outer years. No one has made a decision on that yet. It's up to the board ultimately at some point. But you'll see about $2.5 million worth of projects not yet identified. That could be a new post office. That could be another golf course. Those are $2 million items roughly. So those are there, and they could be done or could be not done. It's up to the board at that point, because that's a good 3 years out. And I guess it'll be up to future boards at that point, since it's at least 3 years out. But that money is available. We projected it will be available, but at this point, it's too early to say. The other thing is that by then, we will know what Geosyntec has done or not done. We'll know whether their estimates that they've given us are correct or incorrect. If they're incorrect, we're going to have Jess here for a live presentation the next time if they're incorrect. And we'll take care of him then. But we think that the $2.5 million obviously is available. So those are decisions that'll be made down the road, not right now. But you can see that we will be able to do that. The next slide gives you some key assumptions, and that is our net income for 2021 is the approved budget. And we forecasted that it'll stay relatively the same, flat after that, or stay the same, just for forecast purposes. And the other thing, of course, is this capital contribution fee, which starts at is now at $2,500, and go up, and it will go up $500 a year. At least we're forecasting that it will do that over the next 3 years until it gets to 5,000. That's based conservatively on 190 closings a year. We historically, if you take out 2020, which was an unusually high year, but normally we close about between 200 and 250 sales a year in Big Canoe historically. 2020 was a truly exceptional year. We started out 21 also very high. I think we had 32 closings in January. So I don't anticipate we'll maintain that pace, simply because as Phil tells us at the board meetings, we just don't have anything available for sale with only 20 homes on the market right now. So that probably will wind up closer to our normal averages for this year and the years beyond. So we think we're being a little conservative there. That produces $600,000 a year in capital for use in this program. I would recommend the board go ahead and put into their minutes that the 500-a-year increase is just a foregone conclusion, and not leave it for future boards to have to deal with it each year. The capital assessment fee right now is $25 a year for the property owners. This forecast shows that stays flat and doesn't change. Again, when you get in the out years of 2026 and beyond, we can't totally forecast that, but we do believe that this program, this $4 million we're talking about, will be available based on these assumptions. If you'll give me the next slide, that's the cash flow forecast. We did a cash flow forecast, and we took out the restricted capital reserve fund. Please note that that's a $2.8 million fund, that capital reserve. That is for roads, bridges, dams. It's actually in the minutes, it's available for years when we do not have sufficient dollars to maintain our $2 million minimum monthly cash level that we say we have to keep. And you'll see in the 2024 to 26 that we fall below that 2 million. We could tap that $2.8 million reserve fund. If we do that to the tune of about $1 million, I can tell you that you've got 3 years to replace it. and that would be a $300,000 or $400,000 a year replacement requirement. Again, it would not create a strain on our cash operations at all. We still have that 2.5 million that is yet to be determined as to what we would do or not do with it. And the shortfall of the $2 million minimum level is really based on the fact that we're going to spend this 5.5 million come 24, 5, and 6. And again, that's a future decision. Don't know yet. We'll know volumes about the dam long before that, and that decision will be made at that point in time. Anyway, as you can see, this handles our principal payments on our debt, as well as the lease payments we have on the carts, and it keeps our our operating income at a relatively flat level. With that, Scott, I'll turn it back to you because I don't believe I've got any more, although I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Great, thank you, Bob. A couple points. Number one, sometimes people ask me on Ask the POA or call me or something and say, just tell me what you're going to do with the dam. What you just saw is why it's a really hard question to answer. We just had a professional engineer who does this for a living talk for 40 minutes about what we're going to do with the dam. And Wes and I spend many, many hours talking about what we're going to do with the dam. So it's a very, very comprehensive plan. And as you saw, we just threw up one little slide there. There is a 3-page project plan that everything is linked to everything else. There's a priority, there's a start date, there's a completion date. There's all the stuff that me as an engineer gets really comfortable when I see that kind of thing, because then I actually believe that there's a plan. So it's been a great partnership so far over the last 6 months with Geosyntec. And apparently, even though I'm an electrical engineer, Wes keeps telling me that I wouldn't make a bad civil engineer either. So that's a nice thing. Other thing that I wanted to mention, Bob said this at the beginning. I think of the dam like a Ferrari. It's like we've had a high performance sports car that we've been running the heck out of for 48 years, and it's been performing well. And we've changed the oil every quarter, but that's about all we've done. And so now it's kind of time you take it to the garage, and they're saying, well, if you want to get another 50 years out of it, you're gonna have to look at the transmission. You're gonna have to look, at the engine block has got a little problem here. You might have to do something over here with the brake system and the struts, and that's kind of where we are at this point. So the car's still running. It's safe. It's not gonna cause a major accident or anything like that. But to get the next 50 years out of the Ferrari, you got to make some investments, and that's what we're talking about. The other thing that Bob said, which there's a lot of numbers we threw up at you quickly there, is basically the sources of money for the routine capital that we spend every single day, whether it's painting a building, whether it's buying a new truck, whether it's, I said painting, actually that's an operational cost. Roofing would be a better example. Roofing, basically having to do any kind of physical repair to a building that's going to last several years, that kind of thing, that comes out of our replacement capital. The money to do the bigger things, the master plan things, the dam things, that's coming primarily from the CCF, and it's coming primarily from that $25 a month that we all pay as property owners as the capital fee. We're saying that those do not have to, that those are adequate. If we increase the CCF as planned, like $500 a year up to a maximum of $5,000, which is what we recently passed, and we keep that $25 a month coming, we have enough money to walk and chew gum at the same time. We can still do some of those key master plan projects, and we can do all the things that Wes laid out. And do we have to tap into the $2.8 million emergency fund? We might, to the tune of $1 million in the out years, but we can pay it back within the 3 years that we're talking about. So there's nothing that's scary in the financial cash flow. Now, some of you would say, well, what about my regular assessments? That's a separate issue. That's really funding our operations. That's handling our healthcare, our salaries, all the things we need to do to keep Big Canoe running every single day. Can we say whether that's going to go up or not? That's a separate issue. That, every year our healthcare costs go like this. We're going to have to keep up with our hiring practices and make sure we've got good salaries, starting salaries and things for all of our employees. So whether those assessments go up, that's something we deal with in the budget process every year with the board and the finance committee. And that's separate from the dam that we're talking about here and the master plan project. So you can walk away thinking $25 a month, and the CCF that we have will fund the things we need to do for the dam and the master plan. My regular operating assessments, we handle that in the budget process. If we weren't having a meeting today, that would still be handled in the budget process. So nothing really changed there. Next thing we like to do is pour into 20 questions. And we've looked at them and tried to divide them up and see who's the best person to answer them. We'll take you through all that, and then we'll go to live questions after that and see if there's anything that, like I said before, we inadvertently missed. We didn't try to miss anything. So with that, let's go ahead, Justin, to the first question. So why do the state's listing of lakes list Lake Pettit as owned by the Big Canoe Corporation? All the other lakes seem to be listed differently. I would say that Big Canoe was a little bit of the Wild Wild West back in the 1970s and 1980s. If you think about it, there's been 2 developers here, there's been a set of banks, and then there's a POA. And all the time during that period, different properties moving around and being conveyed back and forth and things of that nature. So we have deeds, we have books of deeds, believe me, in Jane's office right next door. And we do own, we were conveyed as a POA, all of the property that the dam is associated with. Whether that was always updated 100% with Pickens County tax records is a different thing. So we've got a little process going on here with Kim Gaddis, our attorney, to basically look at all the property that was conveyed and make sure that Pickens County tax records are set up correctly and that they have the right names on it and things like that. And as we work through with Georgia Safe Dams, all the design work that Wes talked about, we're forming really a new kind of tight relationship with them. We will also make sure that their records are updated, because that probably always didn't happen between 1970 something and now. So we want to make sure that they have all the right contact numbers and that they're obviously showing us as responsible for the dam, which we legally are because we have all the property and all that was conveyed to the POA. So a few little loose ends in history left over that we have to clean up, but there is no legal issue here. We own the dam and we're responsible for it. Next question. Has Big Canoe ever sent the Georgia EPD copies of all inspection reports for the previous year? Wes, you can take that one.
Sure, I can. Yep. Sorry. So last April, April is when the 4 quarters previous to that go into the Georgia Safe Dam program. And so in 2 months here, we'll be wrapping up this year's, and so it'll be the previous 4 quarters going in, and the engineer inspections have gone in previously to Georgia Safe Dams program as well. So have we sent them all in at once? I don't think so, but they go in once a year for the quarters since that rule has taken effect.
And Georgia Safe Dams notified us, which is actually fine, because like I said, we want to have a really good relationship with them, that for the first time in probably 3 years that we can find, they are going to do an inspection this spring, and they do that. I just talked to them 2 weeks ago. They told me they do about 500 dams a year, and it's just our turn. So they're coming out, and they asked for our inspection reports from 2020 a little bit early, just because they're going to be doing an inspection here, and we went ahead and sent them, and they confirmed that they received them, and we're going to set up a design review with them and start to go through all of the different things that Wes was talking about. So next one. Don asked, are the state of Georgia and federal government generally supportive of Geosyntex plan for the maintenance and improvements of the dams? Wes?
So one clarification, the federal government is not involved here with this dam, as I said, because of its nature. It's regulated by the state. The plans and the things we're putting in place are based on recommendations from the Georgia Safe Dams program and their engineer guidelines. And we haven't had a direct conversation to get this, but in general, I believe they will be, and I think they appreciate anything that's proactive instead of them telling you need to do this. That it goes a long way. That hey, we want to take care of this now before it becomes a problem.
Yeah, the gentleman I talked to is named Tom Woosley. Tom is the director of Georgia Safe Dams. He's been there since the 90s. When I spoke with him a week ago, he was very familiar with Lake Pettit and very familiar with all of the different steps that had been taken over the years that Wes was talking about, and was very both appreciative and excited that we knew what we had. We understand our Ferrari, and is very eager to sit down with us and start working hand in hand. So it's not at all an adversarial relationship. It's a team relationship, and we both want to do the right things, and it's going to be good, actually. So next one. Let's see. Miller asks, what methods are you using to determine the condition of the dam, and does it include radar? Wes, I'll give that one to you.
Sure, I'll take that one. Essentially the visual inspections on the outside, and then we're using those instruments, those piezometers, the 27 ones that I mentioned. There's a combination of different types. They're screened in different intervals. Some are in a rock, some are in the middle of the dam, some are kind of in between. And so that's really how we're looking at the condition of the dam. Radar, ground penetrating radar, I think is what is suggesting. It's not included. And maybe it's LiDAR too. That's another light detection and ranging. I don't believe that. We'll do some survey with that type of thing, but in general, ground penetrating radar is not being used. We've used it previously on other sites, but I haven't identified a need for that at this site yet.
Okay, thank you. Next. Mr. Miller again, who, by the way, is a professional engineer, as you can tell. So we have a few talented people here for sure. Have you considered having a firm of the same quality of Geosyntec performing a peer review? Wes again.
So in general, there's not been a peer review on this plan. The previous stability analyses that I mentioned were peer reviewed, not by done by Big Canoe, but the Georgia Safe Dam program had elicited that peer review. So some things have been, everything has not. I think is the answer. But
and to some extent, I would think Georgia Safe Dams really fills that role in the sense that, when I was talking to Mr. Woosley, he said, you're talking about a pre-design review. So, they bring their people in, we bring our people in, we start talking about it. And like before, I guess, if they feel that there's a need to bring yet again another firm in, they certainly have the right and freedom and have done that before. So we'll leave that up to them for sure. Okay, next slide. Mr. Goldstein says, we have 4 other lakes, each with a dam. Can you comment on their status, including any periodic inspections or any remediation effects on the horizon? Lake Pettit is classified as a Class 1 dam. Georgia classifies dams based on the amount of water that they hold back, the size of the reservoir, and also, quite frankly, if there's any loss of life that would happen if the dam failed. So the only Class 1 dam we have is Lake Pettit. All of our other dams are called Class 2, which means there is no risk of loss of life. So, if the dam on Disharoon failed, you wouldn't want to be on the rock slide exactly when that happened. But other than that, there really wouldn't be either significant damage or certainly loss of life. So as such, as a Class 2 dam, it is not inspected by Georgia Safe Dams. We are talking to Wes, though, about the fact that since you're out here all the time, can we work the other dams, into the program? What would that look like? The POA has routinely over many years done our own inspections. So if we see any erosion on the surface of the dam, trees have been removed, vegetation's cut back, things are routinely reseeded. The Sconti Lake concrete flume, for example, has been resurfaced at least once. The Disharoon spillway, the valve mechanism has been repaired in the past. We are planning, totally unrelated to anything we've talked about today, we are planning on replacing the swim dock at the beach club after this season is complete. That will cause us to drain Lake Disharoon to be able to do that. At that point, that gives us a great chance to thoroughly inspect the sluice gate there, and also thoroughly inspect the pipe that comes out of Lake Disharoon. And at that point, we're probably assuming we need to reline that pipe or replace that pipe in the fall, that type of thing. So again, we're always looking at that as sort of part of our routine capital replacement fund and our capital maintenance, and that is included in our routine capital budget for this year. But those dams are far less risky and are therefore not really considered a Class 1 dam, and they're under POA inspection at this point. All right, next question. Ms. Hendry said, why was it reported we had $3,500,000 budgeted for the dam and then it was reduced to $60,000? In the effort of sometimes trying to be so transparent gets us in trouble. So our director of finance, Jane, had at one point published a future capital plan where there was a number in there for $3.5 million. That was never a bank account. That was never money physically sitting somewhere. That was a reminder to the finance committee and a reminder to the general manager at that point in time that someday we're going to have to do something with the spillway, because Georgia Safe Dams had already, told us at some point that would probably have to be done. Again, it was never money sitting there budgeted that got transferred or taken to something else. It was literally a reminder. If you look at our audited financials over the last few years, we go through an audit, of course, every single year with Malden and Jenkins. And at the bottom of our audit, there is always a comment about, don't forget that there needs to be, at some point in time, work done on the Lake Petit Dam. So we've been trying to be transparent about that and a reminder to ourselves. In this case, it erroneously looked like we had diverted money. We did not. So basically, the cash flow that you saw from Bob is what ties to the money that's in all of our bank accounts. So next one. Ms. Hendry again asked, specifically, what is the new spillway cost, and will we have to build an alternate spillway to utilize while the current one is repaired? Wes.
So as I mentioned, the full price we don't know. We've estimated it could be up to $2 million with other design and things like that. The alternate idea, we will have another way to alternately pass the water. It may not be a spillway, but that's one of the items that we're focused on this year, is to get that alternate. Let's see, will we have to build? Yeah, I guess that's it.
Yep. Okay. Is the dam insured? Ms. Thompson asked that question. So the answer is not a yes or no, but I'll give you the answer. So basically, we have flood and quake insurance on all of the POA-owned buildings that are downstream from the dam. So heaven forbid, something ever fails on the dam, water comes rushing down. The building I'm in, I don't want to be in this building if that would happen after about 6 minutes, is what the inundation map tells me. But we prepare for that with insurance. So basically, we have $15 million of flood and quake insurance on the downstream buildings. We obviously carry much higher insurance for all of our POA buildings, but if there's a dam issue, the Wildcat Pavilion will not be affected. So we don't need to worry about that with flood insurance. So the downstream buildings for the POA are taken care of. We do have 26 million of liability insurance for non-POA owned buildings and equipment. So non-POA owned buildings and equipment. And that would be if there was any type of insurance claim where the POA could be proved to be negligent, which given the presentation earlier, we're not going to be negligent. As you can tell, we're definitely not negligent. So basically, we do still carry, though, the $26 million of liability insurance for non-POA buildings and equipment. The dam itself only has a $2 million property insurance on it. The dam itself, the structure of the dam, is not insured beyond $2 million. And you can ask why. And the reason's pretty simple. Insurance, whether it's your car insurance, whether it's your house insurance, whether it's your health insurance, is a risk reward balance. You're always looking at what are my premiums and what are my deductibles versus what's my risk. And the dam, to replace Lake Petit Dam, is somewhere, Wes and I have talked about this, somewhere between $35 and $45 million if we needed to replace that entire structure. So the last time several years ago, the POA checked into insuring that structure from a property standpoint, the policy would have been $20 million for $130,000 a year. The Audit and Risk Committee at that time and the POA board at that time felt that that was a bad risk-reward equation. Given the amount of attention that we're now spending on the dam and all the things that you just heard that we're doing to ensure its safety and longevity for the next 50 years, the feeling was that that's not a good use of POA money. Now, the Audit and Risk Committee looks at this every single year, and they're looking at it again. So they are looking at all the different limits, not just for this, because I worry more about forest fires, honestly, than I worry about the dam. I spend a lot more time on the dam than I do forest fires, but I have a lot more control over the dam than I do a lightning strike that happens on Sanderland. So the Audit and Risk Committee has the charter to take to the board every year and to management. Here's what our assessments are of our limits correct, our deductibles correct, what's our experience ratings been, all of those things. And they are working on that now, actually. So that's kind of a long answer to a short question, which is why it's not a yes or no. Okay. Next one. Jan Murphy asks, what type of insurance is needed or available for property owners who live in the path of the dam if any unforeseen disaster should happen? That's a great question. So if you have a piece of property that is in an inundation map, and we'll talk about that in a second, then the recommendation from Marsh, who is our commercial insurance company, is you should call your homeowner's insurance agent and you should say, I live in a dam inundation plain, not a flood plain. That's totally different. I live in a dam inundation plain, which is obviously very low risk that anything would happen to your home because it's not a floodplain, it's an inundation plain. And you can ask them if it's possible to purchase a rider for your homeowner's insurance if you see fit. And again, that's a risk reward type equation. Marsh did not think that would be an expensive rider because again, the risk is very low. And that's the way insurance companies price everything. But you could certainly ask. And then the follow-up question, of course, is how do I know? And we're going to be proactive because I don't know all the history. I've only been here 7 months, so I can't speak to what happened before that. But we are going to send a letter to everyone that owns a house that is on a lot that is in the inundation plain. And we're going to inform you that you live in the inundation plain. And we're going to basically tell you what I just told you, which is call your insurance agent and say, I live in an inundation plain if I'm interested in getting a rider put on my homeowner's insurance. And most importantly, the thing you really need to do is you need to go on And everybody here, by the way, should do this. So if you haven't done this, doesn't matter whether you live in an inundation plain or not, you live in the mountains, tornadoes happen here, forest fires happen here, floods can happen here, and we do have a class 1 dam. You need to register with Pickens County and with Dawson County in their weather alert signups. And the way you do that is you go to the POA website, you click on POA, you go to Community Overview, and then go down Community Overview, alphabetical to the bottom, Weather Alert Sign Up. And then you go to Code Red for Pickens County, and you go to Swift 911 for Dawson County. And it doesn't matter where you live, just kind of like the vaccine, you can go to either one basically and sign up for both. And you can say, most importantly, I would like you to be able to text my phone. And what that means is if there is a disaster, a forest fire, a tornado, or a dam breach, the counties are responsible for notifying you that there's an issue. We notify them that there's a problem. They notify the property owners both downstream outside the gates and inside the gates. It's the EMA director's jobs at the county 911 services to coordinate any type of response, evacuation, etc. But they can't do that if you haven't given them, email addresses, and especially your phones. Because we give them email addresses if we have them. We don't normally, you have to opt in to be allowed for them to text you. So we're going to send out, don't have to play this back 100 times. Tim Moran is going to be sending out something that basically walks you through these steps. We'll get that out really, like, if not this weekend, Monday. And it basically will show you, here's what you do. But you want to do that anyway, even regardless of this dam discussion. It's really, really, really important. So thank you, Jan. Long answer, short question. Next one. Miller asked again, dam was constructed in an era where quality control during construction was not well defined or easily accomplished. Are there existing construction records or anyone who participated in its construction? What was the quality of the soils used in the dam? And Wes talked about that a little bit, but you could probably go through that again real quick, Wes.
Sure. Yeah, I can. Yeah, we went over it, but in general, there's not, in terms of the quality control documentation that was done during construction, we have not been able to acquire any of that information if it was done. The existing records we do have are basically the design drawings and the current situations we have. A couple modifications, the interceptor drains and things like that designs, but not a lot of as-built documentation from the 70s when it was built. The quality of the soils, I believe, I don't know if that's the compaction, but what we've done in the stability analyses and the borings, we've assessed the soil properties and got in situ data from blow counts and things like that. We see how well it's compacted from information as we drilled those holes back in 1998, I believe. And so we have records of that, which shows it's generally, I believe, a medium dense kind of silt. I won't get too technical here, but the actual compaction records is we do not have from the construction testing.
Okay. Next question. Regarding dam abutments, has the interface of the dam with the existing soil and rocks at the end of the dam been investigated?
Another great question. That is one of the items we had put in our plan to go out and do an investigation at that location, at the abutments, for that very reason. And there's a subsequent design option there too, just in case there is problematic things there. So great question, Mr. Andrus.
Great. One more. Any construction that could be completed now to reduce risks?
Yep. And so that was that temporary lowering the reservoir action. There's going to be a plan put together for that. Not necessarily large earthwork kind of things or modifications to existing structures. It's probably going to be something like some pump pads and pumps brought in and running some lines around so we can pump lower than the current spillway if it ever is needed.
Okay. Next one. Has the stormwater runoff been evaluated using modern methods?
Yep. Great. Another great one. That's our first task is this H&H analysis that is ongoing. So the modern methods are evaluating, I can get into the technical stuff, but what's called a PMP, that's what's required for this category 1 dam, probable maximum precipitation. We will model that and then look at the surface conditions for runoff and things like that. And that will all be incorporated in that model.
The emergency plan, that's what kind of what we just talked about. Does it define how often we have inspections, determine when to take action, decision change? Yes, 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 and yes. So there is an emergency action plan. It was last updated in 2018. That's why we have it on our plan to be doing it actually within the next few months. The inundation map will be revised and finished by like the end of March. The EAP will be revised and finished by the end of April, early May, and then we're scheduling, Chief Ricky and I are already scheduling a EAP review and exercise that we're going to be doing in June. Like I said, though, we're not waiting for that. We're going to go ahead and use the inundation map that we have and send, again, a letter out to everybody letting you know that you do live in an inundation plane, I'm sorry, and here's what to do on the insurance. And again, a reminder, again, the key thing is the Pickens County EMA director, and it's Pickens who has responsibility because that's where the property is that goes downstream from the dam. Pickens has the responsibility for notifying both people inside the gates and outside the gates of any serious condition with the dam, or God forbid, coordinating any kind of evacuation. And so they are very aware of this plan. They've signed off on the plan. I have the signature on the back of the plan. But as part of what we're going to be doing in June, we'll be meeting with them and working with them. We had lunch with Chris Stansel the other day. He is the chair of the county commissioners. He's been over here twice to meet with me now. And I told him that this is coming, and he's 100% obviously behind that. So we will, again, let you know very soon what's going on there. But yes, we do have it, and yes, we are updating it. Ms. Hendry said, what is the seismic rating for our dam? When was the rating done? And what's the seismic rating for our geography? Wes?
Kind of touched on this real briefly, but essentially it's not a seismic rating. There's the rules and regulations require a factor of safety of 1.1 or greater for a seismic condition. And that's a stability analysis using a ground acceleration that is published by the USGS. And I mentioned before that that's since gone down since the original analyses. So that means the factor of safety would have gone up. When was the rating done? Well, the regulations or the analysis was done in 1998, but the regulations and the analytical methods haven't changed. The state, federal seismic rating for our location. So Georgia provided that minimum factor of safety, which is 1.1, and that hopefully that answers your question.
And we're at 1.5, right? Is that correct?
It's between 1.4 and 1.5, okay. Correct.
All right. Yep.
Sorry. Thank you.
I just answered this one a couple times. So yes, we will absolutely be notifying folks shortly that you live in an inundation plan if you did not know that beforehand. Okay. Why hasn't the issue of Lake Petit Dam been shared with property owners before now? This question is for past board presidents. Well, I'm not a past board president, but I'll tell you what I know. And then if Mr. Crouch or anybody wants to jump in, they can. We compiled an 800-page history document, Wes and I and Jason, trying to get everything that we could, every document, every report, every picture, every drawing, because it was scattered all over the place. And I would tell you there was an immense amount of activity from prior boards in the 1998 to 2005 range. Many correspondences with Georgia Safe Dams. That's when Geosyntec was first brought in. Peer reviews were done, lots and lots of back and forth, giving us permission not to open the lower level sluice gate, as Wes mentioned. And then things got kind of quiet. We were expecting answers back from Georgia Safe Dams about when they would like to have the spillway worked on, if there needed to be something else done because they gave us permission not to open that gate. What would they like done instead? And nothing really happened. And we just then went about our normal business of inspecting the dam as we should each quarter, and then having an engineer-led inspection done every 2 years, kept submitting those reports, kept waiting. And as I mentioned before, showing numbers on various reports and our audited financials and stuff, saying we know something's coming. And that's part of what the $2.8 million restricted capital fund was about: roads, bridges, and dams. That's why that was set up. So we knew that we had someday, we were going to have to tap into that. But we really never had anything come back from Georgia Safe Dams. So when I got here and started asking a bunch of questions, one of the key things the first time Wes and I met was, do we have a plan? Do we have a multi-year plan for this Ferrari that we have sitting out there? And the answer was, we really don't. We're just still kind of waiting. And I don't really like to wait. So we created this plan and started to engage different people and ask a bunch of questions. And I think it's time now to get really busy, and the board's been extremely supportive of that. And we built this great cash flow model that shows all of the different ins and outs and what's moving out of different bank accounts and where the money's coming from. And we didn't really have that in place, and now we have that in place. So I feel like we're in a really, really good position. What happened in those intervening years, I'm sure Georgia Safe Dams was under a lot of pressure with staffing and things like that. And everybody was just kind of waiting, but I don't see that, there was anything being ignored from the POA side. It's just time to tune up the Ferrari, that's all.
Scott, thanks. I guess I qualify as a past board president. I can talk that in 2006, 7, and 8, when I was board president, there was a lot of conversation about the dam. There was a lot of action about the dam. Bill Bates was the director of operations at the time, and Roger Class, the GM. And there was the emergency action plan was completely updated. The spillway was addressed, and those were some of the things. And it was very much at the time, every time there was an election for a director, that was one of the key issues that was always discussed. What are you going to do about the dam? And it has been in the public eye for at least 15 years or.
Yeah. Okay, next question, please. Mr. Waltrop asks, will the town hall be made available for viewing later? Yes, it is. It's as we do with our board meetings and our working meetings and this meeting, everything is on YouTube. It is recorded, and you can watch it several times if you would like to. But yes, it will be available later.
And please make sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel to get notifications for any future live streams or videos that we upload.
And that YouTube channel is, Justin?
Is Big Canoe POA Media Channel. So it will be, well, you'll already have the links from several of the emails that Tim sent out. But if you just go to Google or YouTube and search Big Canoe POA Media, it should come up.
Perfect, thank you. Okay, next question.
That is all of the pre-submitted questions.
Okay. Do we have any live questions that came in?
Yes, we've got some live questions. Most have been answered already.
Okay.
From the pre-submitted, but David Hopkins has 5. They work well in pairs for 2 of them.
Okay.
and then a fifth. So I'd like to ask 2 questions, get an answer, ask 2 more,
Okay.
get your answer, and ask the fifth. So David Hopkins, lot 4002, what evidence does the POA have that Georgia Safe Dams will sign off on this implementation plan? And a related question, were the geosyntech responses submitted in 2002, that's 19 years ago, 2002, to Safe Dams accepted?
I guess I will let Wes talk about that. I think he kind of mentioned what happened in 2002, but Wes, maybe you could just kind of go through that again with what happened from 98 to 2002, and then sort of just your confidence on what you think from your experience about the plan you've put together.
Sure, sure. Let me make sure this is working. It looks different now. Yep. So the evidence they'll sign off, I think, like I said, being proactive goes a long way, and it sounds like Scott and Mr. Woosley's already had some discussion. So we hope to have several more pre-design meeting kind of things with them. We've communicated via email and submitting things, but usually when we send things in, at least my experience is you don't get a reply, hey, we got this, or anything like that. It's just kind of radio silence. I wasn't around in that period, 1998 to 2002, but what it appears is the same thing happened, that the response to the comments went in, and there was nothing afterwards. So I think the assumption is they got it, and they didn't reply, so that's in way an acceptance of it. So.
Okay,
All
Tim.
right. The next 2 questions are related to the budget. Does the repair budget we were just shown include expanding the toe of the dam if seismic requirements say that must happen? And does it include replacement of the lower lake drain?
So the budget does not include any type of buttress that was previously proposed. And so the other question, the lower lake drain. So there is a line item in there for repairing / replacing the low level outlet, which would be that same system. And so it does include feasibility, detailed design, and construction of that based on the current estimates.
And it was Geosyntech's recommendation back in 98 through 2002 that there was no need for expanding lower level buttress out into Playfield Park, right?
Correct. It wasn't not necessarily a recommendation. The calculations proved it was stable the way it is.
Perfect. Thank you. Yep. That's why I'm a double E and you're a PE. That's better said. All right. Next question.
And the 5th question, the premise is that the EPD says we didn't have accurate information on the height and acreage of the dam. How will Geosyntech get accurate information to establish baseline data for dam height and acreage?
Great question. We have a survey task upcoming 2021. It wasn't really highlighted in there, but we're building it into one of the design tasks. And so that will hopefully get started soon. We will do a LiDAR scan of the dam face. And in terms of I guess they was getting at the storage maybe of the reservoir, that will be part of the H&H calculations. We're not planning to survey the whole thing, but we have the topography from before the dam was built that we can use as an estimate of the water that's there, and then we can use the contours in terms of how much more water can be stored, and that would be part of the H&H calculations that are ongoing.
Okay, Tim.
All right, a late question just came in from Phil Pope. How much interruption of traffic across the top of the dam is to be expected when the big project items are underway?
I think that's something in terms of the feasibility design that when we're looking at all these options, it will be taken into consider. I can't say that for sure, but I know there's these limited lines of egress. So something we would work with the big canoe to decide. I think I can't say we can answer it right now.
All right, another late question from George Ballack. Has Geosyntec installed water level loggers in the petometers, and the dam pool to evaluate the phradic level response to increases in the pool elevation?
Yeah, that's a great question. We have not. Several of those piezometers, actually the vast majority, I think 17 of them are vibrating wire where you can't install what he's suggesting, but several of them are. We have not done so. We talked about it, but just hadn't seen a need to get that much data. That much more data is that much more analysis. But it is an option and something we'll keep in mind moving forward. We've definitely thought about it, but have not done so yet.
All right, thank you so much. That wraps up the questions from the audience.
Great. So I would just like to thank everybody for putting up with an hour and a half of what is obviously a very technical project for us. And as you could tell, we spend a lot of time and energy on this. And if we didn't answer your question, or if you have a question later, ask the POA is the best way to do it. And if we can answer it, if we have an answer, we'll let you know. And if we don't have an answer, we'll let you know too. And like I said, think of this as the first step. So as you can tell, this is a preliminary plan. 6 months of thought have gone into it, but each step will actually modify the subsequent steps as we get more information and progress through the plan. So, I'll work with the board to provide some type of regular update as we go through, and we'll certainly keep you informed over the next few years. So that's it from my end. Any other comments, questions anyone else has? All right, blessings, everybody. Have a wonderful, wonderful weekend and stay safe, and we will talk to you soon.